I practically live on these humble 25-minute blocks. But it's got a darker side if you're not careful. Working in isolation, the technique turns us into machines without a clear purpose. It gives us the productivity without the why. I rely on the Pomodoro technique every day to keep focused and productive. Whether it's building products, prepping for presentations, or going deep into my books. It even got me into the best shape of my life during quarantine, which is crazy because all the gyms were closed and we weren't going anywhere. Hi, I'm Sheng, and I help people and organizations think through their toughest problems. Today, I'll show you how to transform the Pomodoro technique into a powerful engine for living and working intentionally. I'll also walk you through the custom Notion tracker that I designed to gamify and bring purpose to our daily to-dos. All right, let's hit it. The Pomodoro technique was developed by Francesco Cirillo in the 1980s based on time blocking concepts taken from project management and software development. The name Pomodoro comes from the kitchen timer that he used. The idea is to break down long stretches of work into more digestible, manageable 25-minute intervals, followed by 5-minute breaks. Sitting for an 8-hour work session might seem super hard, but it's a lot easier when you're able to just do it at 30 minutes at a time. I love it because it kicks me into flow. During each interval or Pomodoro, I only focus on one task. That's usually enough for me to get into groove of things and start doing some serious work. Often, I just completely skip the 5-minute break and end up doing 3 to 4 hours of pure focus. This is how I was able to build MindMap Nation, the community for connected thinkers and mind mappers, in such a short amount of time. It took 5 months of intensive build and launch process, and I couldn't have done it without focused and tracked Pomodoros. I fit Pomodoros into the bigger scheme of my life using the Funnel of Goals framework, a system of purpose identification, plans, actions, and reflection. I've made videos explaining how each of these steps work, as well as a field guide that puts everything together, which I'll link below. But in a nutshell, our big lifetime goals can be divided into smaller steps and milestones, which are then chunked up into more manageable and actionable 2-week sprints. So for example, if I want to be a successful YouTuber, I have to be able to crank out. I need to be able to produce continual value to you guys in the form of high quality video lessons. However, getting there also involves a lot of steps like ideating, writing, editing, hiring editors and designers on certain aspects of that. Each 2-week sprint has 3 to 4 focus areas that map to our major goals. There are 14 days and 2 weeks, each of which can be broken down into 25-minute intervals. This means every Pomodoro is the basic building block of productivity that brings us closer to our bigger overarching goals. I start every morning with a to-do mind map that expands out my tasks for the day based on the focus areas, which then I enter into my Pomodoro tracker, start the timer, and execute. At the end of my day, I usually do a mini retrospective or review to note highlights or things that helped or hindered my day, which builds awareness of activities that I should either continue or take out based on how they affect my goals. All right, let's get into the actual tracker, which I'll link below. This is where you're gonna see when you come in. It's got instructions, if in case you don't review this video, how each Pomodoro block actually works. And what you're gonna notice is that we have the column headers, which is date. So each of these is, for example, today is the 27th of September, right? The focus areas, this is mapped to your goals directly. So if you have, let's say, work-related goals, right? It would go, or tasks, it would go here. And then maybe this is self-development. And then we have, maybe it's family, right? So this is where the classification of your tasks or where they fall under would go. All these cells underneath here is where you would put the task. So for example, maybe meeting with John. Maybe that's gonna take 2 Pomodoros, right? We'll get into this in a little bit too. So this is where you will then put all the tasks related to that particular focus area, which is work, prep for presentation. Maybe that's going to take 4 Pomodoros, right? So all of that, you basically just add up the number of Pomodoros that you project or estimate or goal oriented. You'll put it right here, and then boom, put a 0 because you haven't started anything yet. You've only inputted your tasks. At first, it's going to be a miss because you haven't achieved it yet. If you actually hit 6 Pomodoros, it's going to give you a meet. Or if you exceeded it, let's say you put in 8 Pomodoros or 4 hours instead of 6 Pomodoros, it's going to say exceed. This is where the gamification comes in, where it's pretty painful when you're so close to completing your Pomodoro goal and then you get a miss, right? And this is very, very intentional. And it's kept me going, as well as making me complete my goals for every day pretty consistently. And then you would go through all the other areas and then put your goals down or your tasks down for the day. And then once you have all of these entered, the goal total will actually add up all of your estimated Pomodoros you want to do for that day, as well as what you actually did based on your tracking. And then you would, at the end of the day, assign a pretty subjective rating of how your day actually went. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it great? Well, maybe it's good, right? It's not bad or great. And then daily retrospective, let's say, meeting went really well or something like that. We're going to go through an actual example, but this is essentially how the template will work once you start from blank. Cool. Let's go through our example. And as I mentioned, I use the 2-week sprint system where I break out all my long-term goals into stuff that I can actually achieve within the 2 weeks, right? So this is actually my current sprint. And if you're interested in actually my entire process, I've done videos on it, but definitely sign up for my email epiphany as well. I'll link below because I share a lot of mind maps as well as my techniques on there, or check out the community. This is literally what we do together, right? And here I have self. My 4 big areas of focus for these 2 weeks is myself, which is divided into mental and physical health, and then YouTube, hiring, writing, and MyMapNation. In my sprints, actually in my table, you'll see in a bit, I'll actually combine YouTube and writing into just creation, right? I won't go into the sprint in depth here because there's other resources on it, but what I will show you is what I do every morning, which is I use my sprint goals or my map as a guide for when I'm gonna actually tackle on this particular day. So 9/27, that's today, right? These are the 4 focus areas that I want to group all my tasks around. So self, social, create, and MyMapNation. So under self, I have meditation, working out, and reading, each of which I'm assigning 1 Pomodoro. That's to each of the tasks. So this is what the numbers are for. So this is 1 Pomodoro, 1 Pomodoro, 1 Pomodoro, and then we have MyMapNation, which is reply and post day 6 mind map onto one of our challenges. So that adds up to 2 Pomodoros dedicated to MyMapNation. And then under create, which takes up the vast majority of my time today, is YouTube, filming this video. Probably I budgeted 4 Pomodoros for that. I also have to prep my editors, which is going to take about an hour or 2 Pomodoros. And then also writing my newsletter, which is going out tomorrow. So all that adds up to 13 or 6.5 hours of pretty solid work, right? And then we have another social thing happening tonight. But this is basically how I plan out my day. So now that I have mapped out all my tasks, I can go to my actual live Pomodoro tracker here. And as you can see, it started on September 19th, and I've been tracking pretty much all my focus areas of MyMapNation, create, meetings and social, as well as self-development, right? And I've been also writing all my daily retros of how I actually felt about each day and the productivity level of the daily. All right, so now we're on 9/27. What I will do is, you can see here, I've got all my trackers going on here. I will take my to-do mind map and literally go through all of the cells and enter them in. So MMN is reply. That's going to take 1 Pomodoro. Post daily day 6 my map challenge, day 6 map. That's going to be another 1. So I am budgeting 2 Pomodoros for this, and right now it's a miss because I haven't started yet. Create is going to be YouTube, so film, Pomodoro, video, that's going to be 4. Prep my editors, and I'm hiring new editors, so it's actually taking a little bit longer than usual, so 2 Pomodoros for that. I have to refilm the ending to one of the videos I kind of messed up on, so 1 on that. I crossed out, you'll notice that I crossed out edit and publish because I don't think I'm gonna actually have enough time today, right? So that's probably gonna be pushed onto tomorrow. The newsletter is going to take about 6 Pomodoros. So all in, it's gonna be 13 budgeted, again, 0, or actually at this point, there's 2 because I've been prepping and filming this video, right? So making some progress. Since I'm not gonna get to editing and publishing one of my videos, I'm gonna go, okay, so edit and publish tomorrow. It's one of the tutorials, so I think it's a video mind map tutorial. So that's gonna take 5. In case some other stuff pop up tomorrow around create, I'm not gonna add it in right away. All right, moving on to meeting and social. So tonight I have a Stone Soup Ripple event, which my friend Christine, also a MyMap Nation member, is hosting. This is where she's a former film festival director, and every Tuesday she's got this meetup where we watch a documentary together, a film together, and she usually invites the director, the producers, and the crew in for a live discussion afterwards. So super freaking cool. That's gonna be about 2 hours this evening, so I've got 4 budgeted there. Haven't started yet, so it's a miss. All right, the final one, which is self. We've got meditate, 1, run, not just work out, but actually run, and then finally read is gonna be 1. This is actually what I did this morning when I woke up at like 5 a.m. and couldn't go back to sleep. I was like, screw it, let's just get up, meditate, run, and read. So frankly, this has been completed, and therefore it's a meet, right? If I decide later in the day I want to read another 30 minutes, it's going to be 4, and I'm going to have succeed, and that's going to be an awesome, awesome win for the day. So what you'll notice here is that we've got 22 Pomodoros. This is actually a very, very busy day. I would consider anything over 16, 18 Pomodoros to be pretty packed, right? Because this is actually like 11 hours of pretty focused work or workout or meditation, whatever it is. Or even social, right? I like to track social because it gives me a sense of how much time I'm actually dedicating to a particular area. And we completed, total done 5 so far. I can't put a rating yet because we haven't finished the day yet. But you can see here, yesterday was a great day. So yesterday I went to Palo Alto from like 7 a.m. and just went to a cafe, did a really good reading session of a tech article, broke down NVIDIA and semiconductor industry. I learned a lot, even mind mapping it out, right? And then good progress on making, prepping for this video at another cafe, and then finally caught up with one of my friends and then went to a venture capitalist dinner where I met a lot of cool people. I did stay a little bit longer than expected, but yeah, it was really fun. I might show up in another podcast or something too. But what you'll see here is that it's a reflection of all of the components that I had budgeted for, right? So for example, reading, I had budgeted, actually, my goal was 2 Pomodoros. I actually exceeded it with 2, so that was an exceed. The venture capitalist dinner, I stayed a little bit later than I wanted to, but so still, it's a 7, so exceed. But because of that time spent in those other areas, I wasn't able to, for example, reply to people in MyMap Nation, which I'm gonna do and catch up on today, right? So that was a miss, as well as a Pomodoro tracker, some of the other stuff I want to prep for creation, didn't get to. So there's definitely a cost with that as well, which this tracker shows me. When I have 2 exceeds, 2 other things are gonna be a miss, right? Everything comes with an opportunity cost, which is essentially what's showing. All right, so now that we have listed out all of our tasks for the day onto this tracker from the mind map, what we can do is actually go to our task that we want to do. In my case, I actually have to respond to MyMap Nation folks, right? So what I'll do is I'll go to my timer and hit play. And as you probably noticed, this one was actually already going on while we were talking. So for tracking, you've got a lot of options. You can either use your watch. So for me, it's an Apple Watch. I set it for 25 minutes. And when the timer goes off, I will then go ahead and go back into my tracker and then put in, let's say, 1, right? And then go back to what I'm doing and continue doing whatever it is I'm in the flow with. Or you can use a phone app like Forest, which actually blocks out your other apps so that you're not distracted by your phone. That's actually what I use during quarantine a lot. And then finally, you can go to a website for Pomodoro trackers, which I've included a link over here, or download something like BeFocus, which is what I have, because it's such a simple UI, especially when I'm working on the computer. After 25 minutes, it gives me a quick notification pop-up, so I'm able to go back into this tracker and then add that number, right? So once both the numbers are added, then boom, I've met all of my goals. So I feel a lot more accomplished that way. And you know what? That's it, right? Like, you just keep on going until you hit or exceed your Pomodoros for that particular category for that day. And then afterwards, you just aggregate everything, give yourself a rating, and then write a few tidbits about how the day went. What I usually like noting are the things that either blocked or helped me achieve my daily to-dos. If you found this video useful so far, I would really appreciate it if you can give this video a like, or even this channel subscribe, because it helps me out a lot with reaching more people with content like this. All right, let's hit up some tips on how to make the best of your Pomodoros. All right, the first tip is don't break your block. Whatever you do, don't break your concentration or your flow for at least 25 minutes. If you start feeling distracted around the 15-minute mark, that's okay. Just finish up the last 10 minutes and then go back to your tracker, add that one, and then move on. Number 2, try to group all of your related tasks together, right? So for example, if I've budgeted 6 Pomodoros for writing my newsletter on Tuesday or whatever it is, I'm gonna try to have all of those 6 Pomodoros in one session. Otherwise, you're gonna deal with a lot of switching costs between, let's say, writing or prepping for a presentation. These require very, very different mindsets. Also, if you have meetings stacked up back to back and stuff, be aware of the switching costs then. If you ever felt pretty lost after you go through a meeting and go try to remember what you were doing before, you'll know exactly what I mean. If you get into the flow of things, let's say after the first one, and if you're in the flow, don't stop, keep going, right? You don't have to take a 5-minute break after every Pomodoro. For me, what I find is that the first one is the hardest. The second one gets easier, and then if I feel like I'm on a roll, I just keep going, right? I just go back into my timer, I hit, skip the break, just keep on going, and then I go back to my Pomodoro, update the tracker. Before I know it, 3 to 4 hours, sometimes 5 hours goes by, depending on what I'm doing. And that's the whole point of going through the system, is that it kicks you into that flow. Don't get out of it if you're already in it. Also, celebrate your streaks. If you've actually exceeded your goals on, a bunch of stuff multiple times a day, like for example here, note it, right? Like put it in your retrospective that you're proud of yourself for hitting all of your personal goals, for example. For me, it's like a meditation streak, or a concentrated effort of writing my newsletter and putting that out, right? Note that in your retrospectives, because that really feeds into our own mindsets, which is really setting us up for success. Everything else comes from the mindset, right? Noting that is super important. Also, put away your phone. As I mentioned, if you're gonna use your phone as a tracker, use a Forest app or something like that to block out all of your other applications that might be distracting. If I'm not using my phone to track, I'm able to just put it in a cabinet, my backpack, whatever it is, out of sight, out of mind, right? So this way, I don't feel this whole temptation at 15 minutes in, and I just want to check my phone because it's out of habit. And then there is time allocation. To me, anything that's over, let's say, 10 budgeted Pomodoros is closer to a full-time job than anything, right? So for example, creation for me on this day is 13 Pomodoros. That's definitely like a full-time job. If you think about why 10 Pomodoros, right? Because that actually just equates to 5 hours of work. But remember, these are 5 concentrated hours. And if you take out a regular workday, let's say 8 hours, 9 to 5, what you have is an hour of lunch break, an hour of general breaks in between, let's say 10 to 15 minutes throughout the day, and then an hour of switching costs. Literally going from meetings to, let's say, writing or prepping for meetings and stuff, or actually doing real work. These are the things that require some kind of switching costs, and that might add up to another hour. So already your 3 hours of the 8-hour workday is spent on breaks and switching costs, which means 5 hours or 10 Pomodoros is closer to that of a full-time job. Anything that is over 5 Pomodoros is what I would consider a serious hobby, right? If you dedicate 2.5 hours to anything, be it reading or playing football or sports, tennis, or whatever other hobby, that is something that you're going to really drastically improve on over time. So that consistency, noting it as either 5 Pomodoros as a serious hobby every day, or 10, which is closer to a full-time job, is really important to understand where your time and your dedication is going towards. Finally, in the basic tips, I would say don't overdo it, right? Like when you first start off, don't try to get like 24 Pomodoros in one session, because that's really, really intense. That's super freaking intense. Your aggregate should be closer to maybe like 10 to 15. And as you're getting into the system, you're not overwhelming yourself and you're not getting consistently misses throughout the day, which is the opposite of a positive mindset and winning mindset. Then you're just beating yourself up over it with all these misses, right? So super important to start up easy for yourself, set yourself up for success. Now let's get into some more advanced tips once you start actually using this table more consistently and over time, right? And what I notice are some trends often. So let's say we go into my August sprint tracker. What you'll notice here is that I've got a bunch of misses, right? So I'm always looking for zooming out and looking at the bigger picture. If I see a bunch of misses across like multiple days, like 4 days right here, I'm gonna go, wow, why am I missing all these things in these categories? So in my instance, I see here that I've got, recurring things, which is circle account setup and sending an email for book pre-sales and stuff. But in general, my Map Nation is lagging behind. And then I see that I'm meeting all these other commitments, right, or goals from the creation side. So I'm meeting these but missing these. That kind of tells me a pattern. If I go over to, let's say, my actual retrospectives, you can see that I missed a few days. I mean, 2 out of the 4 days are actually great, right? I woke up at 5 a.m. I did all these stuff. Okay, cool. What that really tells me is digging into the retrospectives a little bit more. What I noticed is that, yes, even though I had a very productive day, a lot of that was actually spent with editing. So unless if I unblock myself by, let's say, outsourcing editing, I won't be able to be as effective in tackling my Map Nation, right? So this is an insight where you're able to see right away that you have multiple days of misses and exceeds on another category. What are the trade-offs? How can you unblock yourself so that you can actually achieve in the other area? Here's another example of multiple day misses, right? So this is actually less of a trade-off, but more of a commitment thing. So whenever we start a new goal, there's a difference between goals versus actually doing them. So if we continuously miss our projected goals, we need to ask ourselves about our own commitment levels, right? So if we're not hitting our goals, we either need to increase our commitment or decrease our goals. Those are really the only two levers you can really pull. So in this instance, I have budgeted 5 Pomodoros for my meditation, workout, and journaling. This was my routine essentially for self-development. And I kept on missing it for 4 days straight. And I got to a point where, okay, it's not realistic anymore, given that's actually showing that I have a lack of commitment, which then you can see here for the subsequent days, I actually dialed it down to, let's say, 2 Pomodoros and then 4, 2, 1, 4, but it's no longer 5, right? And I was able to meet them. So I actually lowered my goals to the level of my commitment. If I was really, really serious about these, I would actually increase my commitment so I'm able to actually meet the goals, right? So that's actually another way of doing an audit around your commitment based on around this table. The other thing to watch out for is whether or not you're actually overcommitting on one particular area. So here you'll notice that on July 12th, I've got a lot of exceeds by quite a bit, right? So any big discrepancies between my goals and what I actually did, they kind of perk up my attention, right? So in this instance, I had budgeted for, let's say, 10 and 5 Pomodoros, adds up to 15 between 2 days for my Map Nation. Content migration here first, because I was basically migrating content from Silver and Steel website, my old one, to my current My Map Nation website, and that exceeded it by like 10 Pomodoros. That's an entire workday. And if I scroll over to my comments, I actually note that it took 2 times longer than expected, right? So this is actually something else that we want to pay attention to. If we're constantly exceeding something by a lot, is this actually a place where we want to put our times? Is the question we want to ask. And speaking of the retrospective, this is a super useful field to really gauge what are some of the distraction points that are pulling away from your tasks, what you want to improve in the next day, because you don't have to wait until the end of 2 weeks or however long your sprint is to actually gauge your performance. You can do it on a daily level, right? So for example, here I said, what I noticed is that I wasted a lot of time at home, just, vegging and stuff like that, getting distracted after lunch, is that I shouldn't actually stay in my apartment. I'm most productive out in a cafe, which actually led to another realization that I don't really need an expensive apartment if I don't actually spend that much time here, since it's kind of the apartment itself is distracting, right? Or I have, let's say, a very social day, very distracted in the morning. That's something I noted, right? So how do I reduce the distraction going into the next day? Do I need to get more sleep? Do I need to reduce my social obligations? Or do I need to batch all of my meetings together so I reduce my switching costs? So these are all the questions we need to ask ourselves during the retrospective so that we're able to identify the challenges to our goals, as well as the things that really facilitate us, so that we're able to communicate also to our stakeholders or our teams so they can help us work more effectively as well. The final thing that I would look out for is actually just the overall productivity for the entire sprint, right? Which you can actually see at a glance here with all the productivity. This was a very checkered sprint for me, where I had a bunch of poor days, some good, some great, but it wasn't very consistent. And what we want is actually more consistency over the course of the 2 weeks. Whereas, and this was actually in July, I believe, right? Yes, so this was a July 7 to 8/22. If you look at one of my other sprints from 8/7 to 8 or August 20th, this is really, really different now, right? I got in a handle with my sprints as well as this tracker. So you'll see here is that I have got a lot more great, good days going on, as well as tracking what actually contributed to it. The goal over time is to actually improve our efficiency and our productivity by noting the things that really distract us or keep us on track, right? So that hopefully not every day is going to be great. Also, don't feel pressured to make everything great, because that's not going to happen. It's okay to have some poor days and some good days. Things go up and down, right? But in general, we like to smooth out our consistency over time. All right, that wraps it all up. If you found this video helpful, you might be interested in my other tutorials on the 2-week sprint and mapping out our life goals. And if you're ready to take your mind maps to the next level, then sign up for my weekly newsletter Epiphany, or better yet, check out Mind Map Nation. We just finished a 7-day mind mapping challenge together as a group, and that's just a start. All right, guys, as always, thank you so much for joining me. And until next